just put my plate of food down so I can finish it after I do some welcome. Welcome to those who are online already. We'll be listening to some music and introducing a few folks, and Kaitlin Curtice will be starting soon. What did that guy do? Oh, what would you like me to sing? You want me to sing a song about the journey?
I come up there and dance.
Maybe later. Maybe later. The drummers are coming out again. Are you going to help them drums tonight?
I can get my big drum.
Where is your big drum? Back with it.
Rolling it in. Oh my goodness. What a kid. Well, it was a drink. Cold water. I think that's
started to.
Well, I have to draw and I can't walk.
In retirement, he'll start to do that.
I might. The kids are good teachers, actually.
That's what I said. Listening and listening.
So now we're really going to
That's well.
test our 47 years. Can you do it?
That's just what I did too. Now with you, I went to the car. Yeah.
If we just run up there real quick.
Welcome to Greensky Hill. I think we've got plenty of volume tonight. Can you all hear okay? I was super thankful for how good the sound was on our recording from the earlier live stream from last night. If we haven't met yet, or even if we have, I am still Jonathan Mays. I'm the pastor of this church for the last 10 years. And I really honestly can't tell you how thankful I am for that. I have shared with quite a few folks, as most ministers have experienced, not every pastoral appointment is a positive experience. In fact, every single pastor I know has been traumatized by churches along the way, and most of them wanted to give up along the way. And this congregation has been so welcoming and so encouraging that I am beyond thankful. I do have a couple of focused announcements and someone to introduce before our drum voices of Greensky Hill sing for us. And we'll also have a couple of opening prayers. Just to check in with all you other humans, do you have a teeth check person like I do? I'm still eating, so I had Kathy check my teeth before I got up here. I think that fits in Realm 2, kinship. I think it fits there. We have 3 priorities that if you were to ask any single Greensky Hill member or constituent what they are, they would all be able to tell you, because they came from within, from listening circles several years ago. We asked, what do we need, what does our community need from us, and what does Greensky Hill need from our community? And we sat in a circle of 60 or so people a couple different times, passing the talking stick, answering those questions. And out of that came that we will be a radically welcoming sacred space for all people. And we named some of those disenfranchised people. And we've been actively welcoming and radically welcoming everyone that wants to be welcomed. The second is that we would experience the greening of Greensky Hill. And so you've heard a lot about that, and we have a green team that is making that happen. The latest project of that team is a community garden that is out in the corner of our property over there beyond the fire tonight, and it is an accessible community garden because we want to be radically welcoming to all people. And the same green team is overseeing a $100,000 Sacred Spaces Energy Grant that we received from the state of Michigan to get off of carbon-producing fuel and be able to heat and cool. And Kaitlin and I were talking about this yesterday. We don't yet have air conditioning except for one beast in the kitchen window. That beast is going to be replaced with an energy-efficient, non-carbon creating cooling opportunity for both of these buildings. We don't need it often, but when we need it, we really need it. So we're thankful for that, and we're getting off of propane gas completely, and there will be a beautiful array of solar panels at the top on either side of Susan Hall that will generate clean energy back into the grid to cover almost all of our energy use. And not only will we reduce the second biggest budget item for a small rural church, utilities, we will reduce that to almost nothing, but we also will accomplish our creation care goals of generating more energy than we use and feeding clean air back into this beautiful sacred space. And the third priority that came out of those listening circles was that Greensky Hill, in addition to being a living Christian church, a United Methodist congregation, we would be an Anishinaabe cultural center. And that means all kinds of things that are still in the works. Our drum voices are a representation of the kind of cultural center things that we would want to do. Bringing Kaitlin Curtice to Greensky Hill is the kind of thing that our cultural center wants to do moving forward. And as a result of that, we just filed with the state of Michigan a few days ago for a new nonprofit that is called the Greensky Hill Anishinaabe Conservancy. And that nonprofit has as its mission to protect this land for 7 generations, forever, as long as the river flows, in perpetuity. Pick a name to describe, it's always going to be protected. And specifically protected from development by any one individual that wants to get rich because we're sitting on a beautiful lake, or because we have all this beautiful open space and forest. This is a sacred space that Greensky Hill folks built with Peter Greensky. We don't know exactly when the church got built, but we do know the congregation was established in 1833. Have you done the math yet? We're celebrating our 190th anniversary. And now we know that for the first time since Peter Greensky affiliated with what was then the Methodist Episcopal Church, and then all kinds of transmutations since then to become the United Methodist Church, for the first time since that time, the Greensky Hill natives will have their land back. And we're so very thankful for that. Bishop Bard is coming to celebrate all these things that I just shared, along with the fact that he and his cabinet accepted my retirement, effective December 31st, and allowed us to announce that the next assigned pastor to Greensky Hill will be our own Sarah Dominic Schaefer. And she's here. She may have gone home to change clothes because she was in the kitchen, but you'll get a chance to talk to her later. And with that, I want to invite our brand new district superintendent. He's not new to ministry, but I will let Scott Harmon tell you a little bit about himself. And we shifted from the Northern Waters District to the Northern Skies District with some consolidating that the conference has done. And our district superintendent is Scott Harmon. He's a new friend of mine and a leader of our district, and he is here to bring greetings and celebrate with us. Passing around the sign-up sheet. If you've already given your other information on another sign-up sheet, you don't have to do that again, but please put your name down again. And if you haven't shared your information, please do so we can invite you to more of these things.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. I'm going to move a little bit forward here just because the roof is a little bit lower. But it is a joy to be here at Greensky Hill. My name is, as Jonathan was sharing, is Reverend Scott Harmon. I'm District Superintendent of the Northern Skies District. For those who may be aware, those who may not be aware, there's been a redefinition of some of the district boundaries here this year. And Greensky Hill is now a part of the Northern Skies District. For many, many years, the Northern Skies District made up the Upper Peninsula and maybe a little tip of the Lower Peninsula. Well, that little tip has grown a little bit down further south, and it just means that I have the opportunity to come down and to stay at Lake Louise, not too far from here. I have an opportunity to stay there whenever needed, and that's where I base out of when I'm down here in the southern region. And when I'm in the northern region, then I'm at Marquette as well. And I will come down multiple days. I'm here 3, 4, 5 days at a time and being able to connect with congregations. And this is one of those opportunities that I did not want to miss. When Jonathan invited me to come and to be a part of the celebration that's taking place here at Greensky Hill, I wanted to be a part of this and make sure that it was factored in and included in my calendar. In John's Gospel, in the 10th chapter, Jesus said, I've come that they might know life and know it abundantly. And I cannot imagine, through the initiatives that have been taking place here through Greensky Hill, a more faithful expression of all that God would have for us, and to be able to walk in this world in a way that represents our Creator and the one who gives us life and from whom we find our life. So I just celebrate that in the midst of our time together, and I look forward to being a part of this time. Unfortunately, I will not be able to be here tomorrow. I have other commitments, but Bishop Bard, David Bard, is going to be here, and he is a treat, and I know that you are going to enjoy him warmly as well. But thank you Thank you for your warm hospitality. Thank you for your warm welcome. I am blessed to be able to be with you here this evening.
If I weren't retiring and becoming a district superintendent, would I grow? Hunter loves dad jokes, even granddad jokes. So listen, one of the things I love about what we're doing is sometimes the completely unrehearsed moments are delightful surprises, and Scott has no way of knowing that tomorrow's very brief message when Bishop Bart is here before we celebrate the Native American celebration of communion together is based on the First Nations version of John 10:10 that promises that the Good Shepherd brings a life of beauty and harmony. And we're just going to tie that truth into the 7 grandfather teachings in a surprisingly brief message. You can hold me to it, I promise. Would you pray with me in your Anishinaabe, your Ojibwe hymnal, the binder that's on every other seat out there. You'll see in the front of it the grandfather prayer by Keshe Fast Moving Cloud. And that's our opening prayer in English, and then our sister Dorothy's going to come and offer a prayer as well. Let us pray. Namada. Grandfather, look at our brokenness. We know that in all creation only the human family has strayed from the sacred way. We know that we are the ones who are divided, and we are the ones who must come back together to walk the sacred way. Grandfather, Sacred One, teach us love, compassion, and honor, that we may heal the earth and heal each other. Amen. Dorothy?
Dorothy? I want to come with you. Hey, I want to come with you. I can come with you.
Stay right here. Go on, she said, go up there. Go on. Into the show here. She drops that side.
Ani Fuju, Nisqua Gijigo Kwe, Indigenous, Waganakasin, Odawa and Dao, Ushike and Dodam, Point City and Doda. Kajamado, Miigwech, Nijian, Manova Bazawan, Nangwa. Creator, thank you for giving us the good life today.
Invite the drum voices of Greensky Hill to lead us in song.
Okay, I come dance with them. Hey, I come dance with you.
This way so you're in the center. Yeah. Tens of thousands are watching.
Guys, hey. Guys.
Hum,
we're going to have a little more music as Kaitlin is getting set up and taking Ancestral Realm 3 tonight. If you haven't met our special guest, Kaitlin Curtice, you'll hear a lot about the book that is the theme of this weekend celebration, Living Resistance. And she's already taken us into Realms 1 and 2 yesterday and this afternoon, and now we're moving into Realm 3. And Jeremy's going to play as Kaitlin guides us in a practice that's been very helpful for her and those of us who have started practicing it with her.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Bonjour, Kaitlin Curtice, Indigenous Potawatomi and Dao. Hello, my name is Kaitlin. I'm a citizen of the Potawatomi Nation. So if we haven't met yet, if you haven't been here this weekend, if this is your first time, I'm so glad that you're here. And I've been sharing lots of readings and bits from my new book, which is called Living Resistance, an Indigenous Vision for Seeking Wholeness Every Day. And this is my third book. My second book, Native, was about sort of my journey growing up in the Southern Baptist Church and my struggles and journey within American Christianity and in America itself. So understanding who I am as a Potawatomi woman and coming to terms with that and learning about myself and my own story was a lot of Native, and it was a really difficult book to write, and this book was kind of my what now book. And I loved writing this book, and I love holding it in my hands. The artwork is beautiful. It's done by an Anishinaabe artist who is just wonderful, and she brought it all to life, and I'm so grateful. So I'm going to be sharing now from the third realm. We are following this cyclical design, these realms of resistance. It's a cyclical sort of model, and so we've been thinking about how we live and inhabit these different spaces every day of our lives, really. And so tonight we are in this third realm. This third realm, the blue, which is the ancestral realm. And so tonight is a lot about the fluidity, the movement of water, the movement of living in this liminal space between those who came before us, our ancestors, and those who come after us, those 7 generations down the line. And so we're going to be spending time there. And I want to read a poem from this section, and then we're going to do our safe space reflection. I'm going to read you this poem. This is from, at the beginning of every section of the book, I wrote a poem. That's kind of a way to just take a deep breath. So I'm going to read this, and then we'll do our safe space reflection, and I'll share what that is for everyone. I want to tell you something. That ache, that exhausted longing, that hole that seems to fill with nothing but air. Remember the nothingness that fills it. One day you will need space to breathe, to remember, to accept, to grieve. And that big open space inside of you will become home. It is a space that is ancient and modern, there and here, everything upon everything nestled in the quiet, and one day you'll need it. One day you'll go there and you'll stay a while, and all that air around you will be the very thing that cocoons you and prepares you again for the outside world. I want you to tell me something. Do you feel it? Do you long for home? Do you need that air? Do you believe in it? Do you believe in you? So I shared last night that, especially when COVID hit, I started doing this sort of safe space reflection. And there were a lot of nights where I just could not sleep. And I was just generally anxious about a lot of things, which I'm sure some of you have felt as well. And so I started creating a safe space in my mind, a space that I could go to. And it, most of the time, there were a few times I was too resistant, but most of the time it helped me fall asleep. If it didn't help me fall asleep, it absolutely calmed my body still. And so we've done this in every session, and we're going to do it again now. And I'm just going to lead you through it. This is a time to cultivate a practice of care for ourselves, as we are thinking about all these realms that we inhabit. So I want you to close your eyes. Just settle into your seat. Take a deep breath if you need to. I want you to begin placing yourself in this space. Maybe it's a room. Maybe it's a cabin in the woods. Maybe it's by the ocean. Maybe it's a home from your childhood. What is this place? What is this room? And why does it make you feel safe? What is in this place that makes you feel safe and welcomed and loved as you are? So begin building this room, placing things in it. What do you want in your safe space? Maybe there's a comfortable chair. Maybe there's a cup of tea or a cup of coffee waiting for you. A favorite snack. Maybe there's a fire burning. Maybe there's sunlight streaming through a window. Just place yourself in this space. To breathe, taking those deep breaths and settling deeper in. What do you feel in this place? Engage with your senses. Maybe you smell a comforting smell. Maybe you have a warm blanket across your lap or your body. Maybe you feel that sunlight on your face. Or you feel kind of the cocoon of darkness. Maybe it's nighttime. What sensations are you feeling in your body in this place? Is you don't have to be doing anything here. You can just be sitting with the quiet. You can be resting. You could be napping in your safe space. There's nothing required of you here. You can just be as you are. There's nothing calling you away. Just be. You to return to this place when you feel overwhelmed or anxious. Maybe when you feel that pressure that you need to be doing something or reaching a goal that feels really difficult, just return to that place. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So this third realm that we find ourselves in, the Ancestral Realm, this realm's color is blue to represent mbish or water, fluidity, movement in the space we inhabit as we interact with our ancestors. Resistance, this resistance work is fluid and moving. It is the season of summer, when we notice what grows and blooms for future generations, what comes out of the hard work of planting that we did in the communal realm. So the communal realm was spring, and that was the time of community, is a time of solidarity and kinship. That's the time when we plant those seeds, metaphorically and also not metaphorically. We plant seeds. And summer, which we find ourselves in now, which is beautiful, is this time of looking around and noticing the beauty that has sprung up around us. And even being here by the water is a beautiful representation of this realm. This third section of the book, I write about a few different things. I write about decolonization. I write about generosity. I write about intergenerational healing. And I write about liminality, which is one of my favorite words. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit about all of these things with you. I'm going to be reading from the book. I might pause and have you close your eyes again and reflect for a moment, and then we'll keep going. So I want to start with this little word on decolonization. And I was sharing last night that, I am interested in words that become popular. And especially when they are really rich and deep, meaningful embodiments that have been around for a long time, but that we sort of repackage every few generations maybe, and that sometimes lose their meaning in the ways that we use those words. And decolonization, I think, can be one of those words, and resistance, which I chose to write a book on, can be one of those words. And so I like to just step back and ask questions of what are the definitions of these things, or how can we stretch their definitions? How can we examine them from different angles, like it's a beautiful rock or gemstone that we can look at? So decolonization, I write about this in my book Native, my second book, a lot, but I wanted to share a little bit about how I'm framing it in this book. And so I want to read you a little bit about this. In my book Native, I wrote, decolonization doesn't mean that we are able to go back to the beginning, but it means we fix what is broken now for future generations. Decolonization helps us ask questions about the systems, mindsets, and spaces we grew up in. But here I want to go beyond that, because truly living into resistance means coming to terms with the reality of colonization and being brave enough to ask what that better way forward really is. There's a book called Pulling Together, a guide for frontline staff, student services, and advisors. And they say that decolonization is the process of deconstructing colonial ideologies of the superiority and privilege of Western thought and approaches. They say it involves valuing and revitalizing indigenous knowledge and approaches and weeding out settler bias or assumptions that have impacted indigenous ways of being. For non-indigenous people, decolonization is the process of examining your beliefs about indigenous people and culture by learning about yourself in relationship to the communities where you live and the people with whom you interact. In late 2020, farmers in India began a mass protest, calling the world to see the injustice of recently created Indian laws that would deregulate the sale of crops, resulting in catastrophe to small local farms. Sikh scholar Simranjit Singh shared about the importance of paying attention to what was happening in India, since it barely made any U.S. headlines. In a Time article about the movement of Punjabi Sikhs to resist the government in order to have better support of agriculture, Singh writes that the oppression of India's farmers isn't just about what's happening in India. It also speaks to the dangers of unjust and oppressive governments and institutions all over the world. In this moment, as it has always been, protest is an act of resistance, and it is important to us as human beings seeking to belong to one another. When we learn about and embody decolonization, we are looking to those who lead us to show us what it means and why we must resist. Farmers in India protesting to protect the land, folks around the world fighting to dismantle oppressive systems. These people show us how to demand a better world. So that's just a little piece. And there's so much more I could keep reading, but I'm not going to. You can read the book later. It's also an Audible if you'd like to listen to it. This is what I find really beautiful about this community, in this space, is there is this sort of, not argument, but question about decolonizing and indigenizing. So this problem that you can't decolonize without also paying attention to the indigenous voices. And what I see in this community is a really beautiful, long-standing, difficult, wonderful conversation and embodiment of what's needed to be done that has been happening now for a while. And that's a really beautiful thing for me to see, especially in the work I do, because I travel to a lot of places and I talk about this and I talk about it, and I don't see it happening very often, honestly. And it's really beautiful to see decolonization and indigenization coming together. So I just want to thank you for doing that. And, the work of decolonizing is also about dreaming. And I write about the act of dreaming in the fourth realm, which we'll cover tomorrow. But, as an Indigenous woman, the power of dreaming and of not letting go of my dream for a future world, my dream for future generations, my dreams for my own healing is really powerful and difficult. And it's something I'm trying every single day to hold on to. And I think that decolonization is deeply tied to our personal and collective dreams. And so I just want to name that because I think it's really important. And so let's pause for a moment and just think about this. I mean, if you want to journal, you're welcome to, but just think about this for a second. What are your hopes for whatever community you're a part of? You may not be a part of this community, but what are your hopes for your community? As far as dreams, a future world, what do you see in 10 years for a community that you might be a part of? And in those dreams, who is honored, who is cared for? And are there ways that you can indigenize and decolonize? So I encourage you to think about that and to hold that question. Again, your personal dreams and your collective ones. I share about, speaking of decolonization, I share about my struggles with the Thanksgiving holiday. And I've written about it in both of my books because it's just a struggle. And everyone has different struggles of how it lands. So I want to name that. But I want to read something that I wrote in the book about Thanksgiving, because so many people every single November ask me what they should do. How should they celebrate it? And some people celebrate it, some people don't celebrate it at all. Some people have a day of mourning. Some people completely celebrate it. I want to say that there's no one way that Indigenous people do Thanksgiving either. So it is a varied holiday, but it's just complex and difficult. I'll say that. And so people have asked me a lot, like, how do I handle this? And so these are a few little points I gave, and the honest, thing I can say is that I don't know if you can decolonize a colonized holiday, but it's the word that we use. So I wrote, decolonizing and indigenizing the holiday. So here's a few ideas, if it's helpful. First, tell the truth. So this is an article I found in a Potawatomi archive. President Abraham Lincoln officially established the holiday as a way to improve relations between northern and southern states, as well as the U.S. and tribal nations. Just a year prior, a mass execution took place of Dakota tribal members. Corrupt federal agents kept the Dakota Sioux from receiving food and provisions. Finally, at the brink of death from starvation, members of the tribe fought back, resulting in the Dakota War of 1862. In the end, President Lincoln ordered 38 Dakota men to die from hanging, and he felt that Thanksgiving offered an opportunity to bridge the hard feelings amongst natives and the federal government. Indeed, this holiday is built on a lot of lies. Not just the lies of how Europeans treated the Wampanoag people when they arrived here, but lies buried by the government along the way. And the most powerful thing we can do is to get rid of the myth while still holding the sacredness of our time together. So we can start by telling the truth, and even consider holding it as a day of mourning if you need to. Next, celebrate Indigenous foods and cultures. They're incredible cookbooks by Indigenous authors. You can read from them. You can try a recipe. I have 2 books. One of them is called The New Native Kitchen, and I order my wild rice from Minnesota and make the dish we had tonight, the wild rice and berries, is one of my favorite dishes to make at the holiday. And it's a beautiful celebration. So it's the truth-telling and the grief, but also the celebration side of things, I think is really important. Third, make a plan. The difficult thing about the month of November is that it is both Native American Heritage Month and Thanksgiving. Irony. So it all gets rolled into one. And I wrote about this in Native. It's an exhausting month for me and many Indigenous folks. The healthiest thing I can usually do for myself is to go inward a bit, to care for my family, and hope that the world is learning to honor us as they go. One way to honor us is to make a plan for the coming year. So start in November and map out ways you can learn about Indigenous cultures by telling the truth and celebrating who we are throughout the year. Begin with your home, with the land you dwell on. Start there learning about the peoples of the land, both past and present. Make tangible commitments to learn more and learn alongside others. It shouldn't be about shame. It is not our fault that we didn't learn how to honor Indigenous peoples in our school curriculums and society growing up, but once we know, we cannot unknow. So use the time as an exciting space of solidarity and decolonization, and challenge institutions around you to do better by Indigenous peoples. So that's, I don't know, a little bit of a practice that we can look at for one of those things that everyone is asking questions about every year. And it's just hard. And so I wanted to write about it in the book. You know, I encourage all of you to ask these questions with your community, not just your family, and see what comes of them. There's a quote that I love, and I want to share it with you. One of my favorite quotes. Because decolonization and this work, even resistance work, reminds us, as soon as we step into it, we're thinking of all the things that have gone wrong. And that's really hard. And so there's this difficult space of honoring and truth-telling, but also holding hope or holding care in the process. And I think that that's why I wrote the book the way I did, starting with self-love and care and holding that care, but then moving in to the other difficult aspects of being human beings with one another and in community. This is one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and she writes, "I urge you, ask you, gentle you, to please not spend your spirit dry by bewailing these difficult times. Especially do not lose hope. Most particularly because the fact is we were made for these times." I'm going to read it again. "I urge you, ask you, gentle you, to please not spend your spirit dry by bewailing these difficult times. Especially do not lose hope. Most particularly because the fact is we were made for these times." The spirit with which she writes, she has a book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. I think she wrote it in the 60s or 70s, and it is a beautiful book. And she holds so much wisdom, but what I love about her writing is that she holds just this fierce hope as well, which you can feel in the words I just read. And so that's why, I think that's part of why I wanted to write a chapter on generosity as resistance. Because we often look at resistance as this like hard pushing against, but also this gentle, beautiful, like open-handed act of generosity is also resistance. It's also resistance to a society and a status quo that is so full of hard hearts and hatred, right? So generosity is this like surprising, beautiful act of resistance. And so I wrote a lot about it. So I want to read you a little bit from it. To better understand how we cultivate and keep generosity as a form of resistance, we have to consider the economy of fear that is all around us, and the fearful tendencies that we have internally developed, whether we recognize them or not. Fear holds great power. Some of us know this because we grew up in spiritual environments that used fear as a mechanism for finding or pleasing God. I remember being on a mission trip to Colorado when we were hosting a vacation Bible school at a church. And one night after the group devotional time, I was caught in what felt like a near panic attack in the stairwell. Thoughts and fears swimming in my mind about the reality that my best friend at the time was going to hell unless I saved her. Her soul's destination after death was somehow completely my responsibility, and I had been failing. I carried responsibilities and fears like this throughout my childhood. We were taught in our Baptist churches that we were the insiders and that the rest of the people in the world were outsiders, so it was our job to save souls and welcome people into some sort of reality that God had always wanted. Looking back now, I know that a lot of this is an ongoing form of colonization, an abuse that has plagued the earth for centuries. So my modal response to life has been fear. Fear that I wasn't doing enough, fear that someone I loved would die before they were saved, fear at the thought of walking up to strangers to tell them about God, fear that I was sinning more than I realized, fear of a vengeful God who would eventually destroy the world and take only a chosen few to paradise. These were religious fears, but they bled into all parts of my life. I had nightmares and I was scared of the dark. I held fear in my body. So what happens when so many of us grow up within this hum of fear that's always sort of vibrating? Unless we later go on to face it and name it and heal from it, usually it produces an economy of fear. It produces collective fear. So when I finally realized that maybe atheists aren't that scary, or other cultures around the world, including my own Potawatomi culture, they have beautiful truths to teach us, that hum of fear began to fade away. When we are raised in an economy of fear, our response to anything that's other makes us afraid. So when God, mystery, and the sacred began to expand in and around me, that hum faded. And in its place was the expanse for a new kind of generosity. And that's where it shows up. So when we pay attention, I think this is a really important aspect of telling our own story. And so as you're examining your own story, pay attention to where fear has shown up in your own narratives, maybe where you didn't realize it. Pay attention to where, without you knowing, you developed this sense of fear or scarcity, and what happens when we start to heal that. And how does generosity show up? How do we sort of, let our grip loose a little bit and we aren't holding on? Because that's when we're scared, we start controlling because we're terrified, to let go. And I think generosity forces us to have this kind of open-handed response to so much around us. And that's a form of resistance, and I think it's a really beautiful one. One of my favorite things to write about in this book was this idea of intergenerational resilience, because I know that I've learned a lot about intergenerational trauma, but I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about intergenerational resilience. And so I wanted to know if this was even a thing. And it is a thing. And people are researching it, which is beautiful. So there is something called the Alliance for Intergenerational Resilience, which was founded by a researcher and educator named Dr. Lewis Williams. And it's a worldwide organization. And they focus on reconnecting to the earth as a way of healing intergenerational trauma. And it's focused on the resilience side. So in my book, I write about resilience. I write about honoring our ancestors and healing our connection to the earth. And, to find and embody intergenerational healing, we have to go on this journey with Mother Earth. And I think it's beautiful that they have made this connection for us and helped us. So we're holding on to this. And as we do, I believe that resilience is building. So this is what they say on their website. When we gather together and work on the land, or to celebrate, or to tell stories around the fire, all age-old ways of being that connect us to our ancestry, we are suddenly able to remember what is important in our lives. By reviving our most timeless practices, we remember what it is to be human. This we can use as a basis to imagine our future. So again, resistance, decolonization, intergenerational resilience is all dreaming. It's all the work of dreaming. It's the work of connecting back to the land. I got so excited when we lived in Vermont. I found out about this Afro-Indigenous farm called Soulfire Farm. I believe they're in upstate New York. And it was just, I remember opening the website and I just started crying because Afro-Indigenous farms have been around, but to see this, also this new resurgence of young, a lot of women buying this land, opening these farms, and tending not just to the land itself, but to their own ancestors and to their own stories. I bought a bunch of garlic and a t-shirt. That was enough for me. And it was just, it was so beautiful. And I was so uplifted by that one farm, that one story, because it meant so much to me. And it is everything about resistance as it should be. It is generosity. It is care for the land. It's indigenizing and decolonizing and all the things we're talking about. And so I encourage you to look for those things. Like, look for places where resilience is happening. Look for places where generosity is happening, and hold on to those, because there's plenty that's going wrong. And to remember what's also going right and the things that are being healed is such an important part of our own healing in that. I think about what I would tell my ancestors right now about what I've learned about my own soul, about being human. What would you, if you could talk to your ancestors, what would you talk to them about? What would you tell them about this time we are living in America, on the earth? What would you tell them about your own healing and what it's meant to you? What would you tell them about your dreams for future generations? I think a part of my own healing, which I write about in this section, is through learning bits and pieces of the Potawatomi language. And I don't know a lot. I'm really grateful my tribe has an online language program. And so that's where I've learned a lot of what I've learned, and my kids are starting to do it now. And when I first heard a Potawatomi prayer, it was like a hole in my heart was filled, because I've only ever prayed in English. And I didn't know you could pray. I didn't know, first of all, I didn't know we had a Potawatomi language, because my family doesn't talk about it. And I didn't know that in our language is embedded the culture. So it's so beautiful, and it's such an act of beautiful healing and resistance to step into our languages, and to not shame ourselves also for not knowing them fluently. Like we're doing our best. And so learning those bits and pieces has been such a huge part of my journey and my heart. And one day my youngest son came home from school and said, "Today I said miigwech to someone at school when they handed me something." And I was like, "That's amazing." You know, like that one moment, it means everything. And I think that when we have those moments, many of those little moments can build to something really beautiful. So I want to pause here, and I want to do what we did last night, which is the breathing exercise. Let's just take a moment and settle in here. The sun's in a beautiful place right now, and the trees are beautiful right now. Just like be present to this moment. This ancestral realm is about movement and fluidity and paying attention and generosity. So just be present right now for a moment. This medicine that I offer in the book, I am a human being, I am always arriving. I think even that is a form of offering generosity to ourselves and one another. I am a human being. I am always arriving. So we're going to do 4 deep breaths, and when you breathe in your mind say, "I am a human being." And when we breathe out, we say, "I am always arriving." So when we breathe in, we say, "I am a human being." And when we breathe it out, "I am always arriving." So I'll just lead us in the breaths, and you say that to yourself and mean it when you say it. So breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in and out. And breathe in and out. The biggest, most beautiful part of this, the way I picture this ancestral realm, is almost, it's like this big oval. So it's not a circle, but it's a long oval. and this idea of liminality, which I'll share more about. We are living right now in this liminal space in the middle of that oval. And on one end is our ancestors, and on the other is future generations. And so our sort of realm, the space we occupy, is this in-between space. And I find that to be really beautiful, actually, because our lives are not just our own, but they're connected to something before and after. And I think that our healing, the healing we practice today for ourselves and with each other, is reaching back and forward. And I think that remembering that it's a cycle reminds us of that. And that's something it's just the mental image I carry with me a lot of this ancestral realm. So I write online for a space called the Liminality Journal. Oh, can you bring me my phone? I'm going to read a poem. I think it's in the front pocket, the blue thing. Yeah. Thank you. I write the Liminality Journal, which is essays and poetry, and it's kind of my online community. So if you Google me, that'll pop up. It's just a space that I love to explore, and I called it the Liminality Journal because so much of my life has been about those gray in-between spaces that I most of the time can't really comprehend. And I think a lot of us live in those in different ways. So liminality, this scientific term, is the psychological process of transitioning across boundaries and borders. That's the definition. And so liminal space is that in-between space. We're crossing thresholds back and forth all the time. We're trying to figure out, it doesn't always have to be this or that. It's kind of like rejecting the dichotomies, right? There's these fluid spaces in between. We're in the ancestral realm where things are fluid. Think of water. Like everything kind of bleeds back and forth. And so that is kind of how I picture this idea of liminality. That we think of our ancestors, we learn from them, and at the same time we understand that we are ancestors in the making as well. That there are overlaps there. So we're looking to future generations who will one day remember us. They will remember what we did and we didn't do. They will remember what kind of life we lived. And so we are living in that liminal space. Conservationist Terry Tempest Williams writes about women's bodies and the earth and climate collapse in a really powerful essay. And she says, "The story my body wants to tell is a story of love. It is time to lay our bodies down on the mother and defend her creation. We breathe. We breathe ourselves back into the insistence of beauty." Indigenous people have been trying to tell this love story about relationship with Mother Earth for a long time, and we have found so much dissonance between our cultures and the cultural norms forced on us. So inhabiting these liminal spaces, not being American enough, sometimes not feeling Native enough, is very real. And we struggle with the ways that colonization sort of sneaks up on us. I know I do. So we try our best to sort of hold this liminal, beautiful relationship with Mother Earth, trying to heal it, trying to ask what's happening. We grieve, we celebrate, we dance, we drink water, we remember, and we heal. So listening to those liminal spaces helps us recognize things like dehumanization and resilience. If we're all experiencing these liminal spaces in our lives, our work is to help each other find and embrace that space. And I want to read you a poem that I wrote in this realm for the book. This is it's a poem about the liminal space of our ancestors. At least for a while we know where to find you, traveling across the Milky Way, the spirit path. We look up and see the galaxy full of life and future dreams. We remember you, and we ask who we want to be. At least for a little while, our grief guides us, questions embedded with wondering how to go on. We look around and see that you are everywhere but not here at all. After a while, we keep going, asking questions, taking walks, begging for a better world. All the while you're there, and we can sense you constantly, everywhere and nowhere, leading us towards something anything in all the spaces between. I knew that this realm would be difficult for some people to inhabit, because talking about colonization and ancestors and all of this in history is difficult. And I want to hold space for that. It's really difficult. And every day we're sort of faced with history that's just unfolding all the time. We can't stop it, you know, and it's the same way that colonization is an ongoing problem. We can't stop it. It feels like sometimes it's the same. And so I want to read a little bit about the power of, if I call this chapter Facing History as Resistance. How do we face history? How do we tell the truth about it? Through an ancestral lens, resistance means telling the truth and understanding my ancestors as human beings with trauma and stories, all while understanding that they are held accountable to those actions through my own life. Facing history means facing them in all their humanity and facing my own in the same way. Facing history is about remembering that one day I will be an ancestor, and that truth should keep me tethered to embodying resistance when and where I can. This should be about something that guides all of us and reminds us daily that our actions, words, and embodiments have ripple effects into the generations who come after us. So remembering where we come from, remembering the truth of it, wrestling with it, asking what it means for today, these are really powerful actions, and I think it speaks to the power of kinship and belonging. And so I encourage you to, again, sit with your story, sit with its place in history, sit with liminal space and liminality, and ask what it means for you. Ask where it feels uncomfortable, where you can explore it with someone you trust. So I want to close this out with one more poem, and this poem is from the Liminality Journal. Every May, we do a poem a day in the month of May, and I create a daily poem prompt with one word for each day, and then we write a poem based on it, and it's one of my favorite things in the world. So this is one of the poems. I think it's Landscape, I think is the name of this one. And I just love it for this realm because I just want us to continue dreaming wider and wider and more expansive all the time. And I think that the power of fear is that our dreams are held back a lot. And the other fear and reality is that maybe a lot of our dreams won't come true in our lifetime, but we can still dream them and pass them on to future generations, and I think that that's powerful. Or just place our dreams like in the dirt with the earth and let it do its thing. So this is called Landscape. I closed my eyes, trying to picture it, to see the never-ending shape of landmass stretching and stretching far beyond me. I could see it, but only in what my mind's eye could imagine. It's not the real thing, not the real beauty of a stretching and stretching land, a never-ending picture of what it means to feel the pulse of Mother Earth. A landscape is more than an idea, but a chance to dream. So I close my eyes and picture this landscape and wonder what it means to dream of a day, a month, a year, when there are no boundaries around my belonging or my freedom. I dream of a world in which the oppressed are free, where fear is gone, where we are all healed. Maybe there, the landscape is simply the stretching on and on of our joyful, sacred hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaitlin. We have traveled through 3 realms together, and tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. we will enter the 4th realm from this wonderful book, Living Resistance. Bishop David Allen Bard will join us to celebrate the Native American celebration of Holy Communion. We'll have a brief reflection on the First Nations version of John 10:10, and that beauty and harmony that we've been hearing about how to embody and how to resist the forces in this world and throughout all of history that don't want people to have that resistance. And that's what our resistance is about, and I think it speaks so clearly to the mission and vision of Peter Greensky, to the mission and vision of the United Methodist Church, where we invite those to enter into relationship with Creator for the transformation of the world. And we have to resist the powers and principalities in order to have the kingdom that God has offered for us. We'll continue doing that together. All of these things, I suppose there are some pastors who love to talk about money. Most of us do not. All of these things, our three priorities, having a wonderful speaker like Kaitlin Curtice, everything that is happening as we resist so that people can have life, costs money. Many of you have been very generous already this week, so we have a guilt-free offering and tithe system here at Greensky Hill. When you have resources to share, and you have an opportunity to share them, please share them. When you don't, please know that we care and we will help if we can. And we should be able to bypass the offering plate without any guilt whatsoever. A round basket is for the ongoing ministry for all of those priorities, including paying for this weekend. So please feel free to give there if you are able. A little picnic basket. I hope someday we will get the rest of the story of which of our former members said, Methodists collect for offerings either once a year or sometimes monthly. This United Methodist Committee on Relief that takes care of all of our neighbors, why don't we do that every week? And so Greensky Hill has been doing that every week since that very powerful, influential, unnamed human being suggested it. And that's what that basket is for. So any pocket change or gifts that we want to go to neighbors locally and globally who might need extra support, that's what that basket is. It'll be sitting here when you leave, and Kaitlin is going to be signing this for a few minutes, as long as you can put it, until her host drags her away, so she can get a good night's sleep. So there are books inside. All three of her books are available. I'll repeat the promise we made last night, and it's in light of that gift-giving spirit that we were talking about. If you're at a place where you want a book and you don't have the money that it says on the table that it costs, it's on Jonathan, which my treasurer said, you at the church, right? It's on us. It will be covered. Other people's generosity, or if it needs to be my personal generosity, it will be. But we've been getting plenty of extra book money. The books have all been paid for already by the church, so we're trying to replenish that money that has been spent. Does that make sense? So you'll take the books that you want, and Kaitlin will sign them for you. If you have funds to pay for them, wonderful. We were asked last night, and I didn't think of it until then. We're not set up to collect money electronically during events like this, except we always have greenskyhill.org. So if you go to greenskyhill.org even now, you can find the donate button, and that button sends your gifts to the Michigan Conference. Please don't worry. I had someone the other day say, I just made an offering and they said it went to the Michigan Conference. It does, in our name, and they send it to us once a month. Okay? So if you want to pay for your book that way,